Throughout history, in order to tell the time in more than one time zone, great leaders such as General Norman Schwarzkopf and Mark Markinson have needed to wear two watches. The Bertucci A-2TR GMT that I'll be reviewing today relieves mankind of the horrible burden of having to wear two watches. I'll be referring to this watch as the Normie. My Normie has been generously lent to me by a friend of the channel. I desperately need more loans of current watches from people who believe in my mission to bring the audience true adversarial watch journalism. There's very little variance in the price of the Normie. The lowest price I could find was $275 on eBay. The inner clock is a 24-hour clock. This is for the secondary time zone. The inner clock only has an hour hand, the red one. The outer clock is an ordinary 12-hour clock. I'll do a demo of setting my Normie at the end. The Normie is powered by a regular quartz movement. Bertucci is keeping the type of movement that they put in the Normie a well-guarded secret. The only thing that Bertucci is willing to tell us about the mystery movement is that it's made in Switzerland, has a 3.75-year battery life, and doesn't have an end-of-life indicator. The lack of an end-of-life indicator is greatly disappointing to me. I personally would never buy a quartz watch without an end-of-life indicator, as I've had nightmarish experiences of quartz watches dying on me without warning at really bad times. Bertucci advertises the Normie as a vintage military watch, yet it doesn't seem very vintagey at all to me. Its shape, color, and large dimensions are modern. Bertucci specifies that the Normie is 40 millimeters, so I was expecting a reasonably sized watch that was going to fit a wide variety of wrists. I could tell just by looking at the Normie that it wasn't a 40 millimeter. Its width, not including the crown, is 40 millimeters, but watch sizes are expressed in diameter, not width. Its diameter is 42 millimeters. The Normie is a very long watch. Its lug to lug is a whopping 50.5 millimeters. The Normie wears pretty well on my roughly 7-inch wrist with my own NATO strap, which is made of soft, flexible material. I'll get to the supplied NATO strap shortly. I think a guy with a smaller wrist could probably wear the Normie comfortably, but it's going to look too big. I think you can argue that the Normie looks a little too big on my average-sized wrist. The Normie's lugs don't use spring bars. Instead, they have fixed bars for inserting pass-through style bands. There are a number of advantages to this. The fixed bars, unlike spring bars, will never break. The fixed bars have a wide opening so that very thick bands can be used with the watch. Band changing is much easier and faster. The disadvantage is that you can't use a regular watch strap that uses spring bars with the Normie. The Normie's case thickness is pretty reasonable at 11.5 millimeters, but keep in mind that since you have to use pass-through bands, this will increase the effective thickness of the watch. The supplied strap adds 2 millimeters to the Normie's thickness. The Normie supports 22 millimeter bands. The supplied band is about 10.5 inches. Bertucci refers to it as a nylon heavy-duty B-type band. There's product branding on one of the keepers. The buckle and keepers are stainless steel. Bertucci did a good job matching the color of the keepers to that of the titanium case. Bertucci has a trademarked feature in their band that they call fold and tuck, which is supposed to prevent the excess band from flapping around. I'm not entirely convinced I'm using it correctly, but it seems to work pretty well. The main issue with the supplied band is that it's very stiff. Notice how, unlike my black band, it doesn't conform to my wrist. The owner of the watch told me he hasn't worn the watch much. I suspect the supplied band will loosen up with use. The supplied band doesn't have a rough texture, but it's not the smooth seatbelt feel of my black band. The Normie's case is 44 grams. With the supplied band, it's 64 grams. The Normie is a light watch. I really like the matte gunmetal colored titanium case. It's subdued, attractive, and perfect for a military watch as it doesn't draw attention to itself. I don't like the mystery meat element of Bertucci's titanium. Titanium scratches more easily than stainless steel. Normally, titanium in watches has to be treated with a layer of some compound that protects the titanium from being scratched. Bertucci has an entire page of BS sounding marketing hype about the wonders of titanium and how Bertucci is the leader in titanium field watches. Yet, there is not one mention of what type of scratch protection they use or what grade of titanium they use. I'm going to assume they're using pure titanium and not a titanium alloy, as it says solid titanium on the case back. In Bertucci's marketing hype, they write that titanium is an alloy. Titanium is often combined into an alloy, but it's an element, as evidenced by their image of titanium's number 22 in the periodic table. It's as if Bertucci outsourced their BS sounding marketing hype about their titanium watches to an advertising agency that doesn't know a damn thing about titanium. I would definitely not buy any of Bertucci's mystery meat titanium watches, as I don't like scratching the hell out of watches. I really like the Normie's modern eagle talon type curved lugs, which help to secure the watch to the wrist. I really like that the crown is positioned at 4 o'clock, as this reduces crown bump. I'm giving the case an A based on its looks and design. However, I'm not at all happy with the mystery meat element of the titanium. The crown is very grippable, it's screwed down, allowing the Normie to have a very impressive 200 meters of water resistance, the same as a standard dive watch. The crown has nice crown pop and decent action. I'll cover crown operation at the end when I do a demonstration of setting the GMT. I give the crown and crown action an A. I'm going to put this as nicely as I can. The bezel sucks. The bezel isn't lumed. The lipstick red of the zero marker or pip is fine for daylight readability, but I would have preferred a lumed pip for visibility in low light. This makes sense given that the dial uses lume. The bezel markings look good. The bezel's smooth surface in combination with the lack of an area to get a good grip on it makes the bezel difficult to turn. Rotating this bezel in wet field conditions is probably an incredible challenge. The bezel is 60 click and unidirectional. As you turn the pip of the bezel past 2 o'clock, you get some ungodly sounds that become increasingly worse. The bezel has a huge amount of play and isn't aligned well. I give the bezel an F. It is one of, if not the worst bezel I've seen in my reviewing career. The logo in the center of the dial is, without a doubt, the most annoying thing I've ever seen on a watch dial. Not only did Bertucci cram a way too big logo into the already cramped dial, but they didn't even center it properly. Another super annoying thing that Bertucci did was cram 4 pieces of useless, redundant information at the bottom of the dial. The most ridiculous piece of text is the red GMT. Duh! Another piece of text says A11017 titanium. I don't know what the hell that means. If someone has information about this, please point me to a reference. Don't just tell me. You gotta love the Swiss movement text. This is a marketing gimmick to make people think they're getting something on par with the Rolex movement. Swiss quartz movements are a dime a dozen. Just because something is Swiss, it doesn't make it magically great. Do you like being treated like an idiot? I sure don't. The text on the dial is pretty basic. It's not a boss, but it's readable, so I'm happy. I like the date implementation. The date is readable, and I agree with the designer's choice to use a white date background, as that's what your eye expects at the 4 o'clock position. I'm not in love with the arrow of the red secondary time zone hand eclipsing the numerals of the 24-hour dial. This makes the watch less readable. I don't like that the minute hand has a red tip. This impairs more than improves readability. If you're going to have a red secondary time zone hand, none of the other hands should have red. The second hand is hitting the minute markers in a somewhat half-assed way. If you're going to brag about your high and mighty Swiss movement, you should at least hit your damn markers. Also, it would have been nice if the secondary time zone hand had a quick set function, but it's not a huge deal. All in all, the dial is fairly easy to read despite it being cramped. I give the dial a B minus. The crystal is what I call a glare magnet. It doesn't have anti-reflective coating, but I've seen $100 Chinese watches also without anti-reflective coating that don't suffer from glare problems. It's confounding to me how watch companies manage to produce a flat crystal with as much glare as the normie. The crystal is sapphire. It'll never scratch. The crystal is flush with the bezel. I'm giving the crystal a D. Really would have been nice to have had some lume on the numerals. The lume on the normie's markers fades very quickly. The lume on the hour and minute hands has 90 minutes of staying power. The normie fails my lume test. The normie has a generous 3-year warranty. Bertucci offers a mail-in battery replacement service for $22 with return shipping included. This is a nice service to offer. The normie certainly looks like a military watch. When I strap the normie to my wrist, I feel like I'm about to invade and occupy another country against international law and without approval from Congress. The normie's GMT feature is pretty easy to use, and the normie has good water resistance. I don't, however, feel the normie is a good watch for military use. The timing bezel sucks, the battery can die on you at any time without warning, and the crystal has so much glare that it'll probably give away your position to the enemy and get you shot. I give the normie a C minus. And now for the answer you've all been waiting for. Which is better, the Bertucci normie watch or a Bertucci's pizza? I haven't eaten Bertucci's pizza in a good 20 years. They don't even have them in Vermont. Provided that Bertucci's pizza hasn't gotten any worse, if you gave me a choice between a free Bertucci watch and a free Bertucci's pizza, I'd take the pizza any day of the week. Please like, please subscribe, and please loan. Keep watching to see my GMT demo. I have a virtual meeting tomorrow with a guy in London at 4 o'clock p.m. London time. I haven't set the local time of my normie, so I'll do it now. The local time is represented by the outer 12-hour clock with larger numerals. It's currently 6 p.m. in Vermont, where I live. This is my local time. To set the local time of my normie, I first unscrew the crown. When the crown is unscrewed, it's in the first position. This is the neutral position. It doesn't do anything. To set the local time, I pull the crown out to its third position. I turn the crown counterclockwise until the date changes. This assures that the 12-hour clock is in the AM. I go 1.5 revolutions until the outer clock is set to 6 p.m. We'll worry about the date later. We don't have to worry about setting the minute and second hands in our secondary time zone, as only the hour changes across time zones. To set the secondary time zone, we must be in the second crown position. In the second crown position, the red secondary time zone hand operates independently of the time in the outer clock. To get to the second hand position, it's easier to get back to the neutral position and pop the crown out once. I already know that London is 5 hours ahead of my local time. So I turn the crown counterclockwise to set the red hand of the 24-hour clock to 23, which is 11 o'clock p.m. in London time. We can also change the date in the second position by rotating the crown in a clockwise motion. Notice how the date is changing. We'll screw back the crown and wait until the GMT hand reaches 16 on the inner dial, which will be 4 o'clock p.m. in London, the time of my meeting.